In the waning years of the Romanov dynasty, Russia was a land of profound contradictions. On the surface, it projected an image of imperial grandeur and power. The Tsar, Nicholas II, ruled over a vast empire that spanned 2 continents. Beneath this facade of strength, however, lurked deep-seated problems that threatened to unravel the fabric of Russian society. Russia's entry into World War I in 1914 would prove to be a catastrophic miscalculation. The war exposed the inefficiencies and corruption that plagued the Russian government. The Tsar's leadership came under intense scrutiny as military defeats mounted, and casualties soared to unprecedented levels. On the home front, the war effort placed an unbearable strain on the Russian people. The economy, already struggling to cope with the demands of a rapidly industrializing society, buckled under the pressure of wartime production. Food shortages became commonplace, and inflation spiraled out of control. As the war dragged on, the Russian people grew increasingly disillusioned with the Tsarist regime. The stage was set for a revolution that would change the course of Russian history forever. The seeds of revolution had been sown long before the outbreak of World War I. Russia's rapid industrialization in the late 19th century had created a new urban working class. This working class, concentrated in factories and industrial centers, endured harsh working conditions, low wages, and inadequate housing. At the same time, the vast majority of Russians remained peasants, tied to the land and living in poverty. The emancipation of the serfs in 1861, while a significant reform, had failed to address the fundamental inequalities in land ownership. Resentment simmered beneath the surface as peasants struggled to eke out a living from their meager plots of land. The Tsarist regime, meanwhile, clung to autocratic rule, resisting calls for political reform. Opposition groups, ranging from liberal reformers to radical revolutionaries, faced censorship, imprisonment, and exile. The government's heavy-handed tactics only served to further alienate the population. By 1917, Russia was a powder keg waiting to explode. The war had exacerbated existing social and economic tensions, creating a climate of widespread discontent. All that was needed was a spark to ignite the flames of revolution. That spark came in February 1917, in the midst of a harsh Russian winter. On International Women's Day, February 23rd, March 8th in the Gregorian calendar, women textile workers in Petrograd, the capital of Russia, walked off their jobs in protest against food shortages and the war. Their actions proved to be a catalyst for wider unrest. Over the next few days, the strike spread to other factories and industrial plants throughout Petrograd. Workers took to the streets, demanding bread, peace, and an end to Tsarist rule. The demonstrations, initially peaceful, were met with brutal repression by the police and Cossack soldiers. However, the government's efforts to crush the uprising backfired spectacularly. The violence only served to further enrage the protesters and erode what little support the Tsar still had. Soldiers, ordered to fire on their fellow citizens, began to waver. Some even joined the ranks of the revolutionaries. As the situation spiraled out of control, the Tsar, isolated at his military headquarters, seemed oblivious to the gravity of the crisis unfolding in the capital. He dismissed the unrest as hooliganism and ordered the army to restore order at any cost. Section 4. The Tsar's Abdication. An empire renounces its crown. By March 2, 1917, it was clear that the Tsarist regime was on the verge of collapse. The army, no longer a reliable instrument of repression, had begun to mutiny en masse. The Tsar's advisors, desperate to salvage the situation, urged him to abdicate in favor of his son Alexei. However, Nicholas II, fearing for his son's safety and influenced by his wife Alexandra, who believed that abdication would be a betrayal of God's will, hesitated. By the time he finally agreed to step down, it was too late. The Tsar's abdication, signed on March 15, 1917, marked the end of the Romanov dynasty and 3 centuries of Tsarist rule in Russia. The February Revolution, as it came to be known, had triumphed. The abdication of Nicholas II sent shockwaves throughout Russia and the world. In the streets of Petrograd, the news was met with jubilation. For the first time in centuries, Russia was free from Tsarist rule. Section 5. The Provisional Government, a nation in transition. In the aftermath of the Tsar's abdication, a provisional government, composed of liberal and moderate socialist leaders, was formed. The provisional government pledged to restore order, establish democratic institutions, and continue Russia's participation in World War I. However, the provisional government faced a daunting array of challenges. The war continued to rage, draining Russia's resources and manpower. The economy remained in a shambles, and food shortages persisted. Moreover, the provisional government had to contend with the growing influence of the Petrograd Soviet, a council of workers' and soldiers' deputies. The Petrograd Soviet, though initially supportive of the provisional government, increasingly challenged its authority, issuing its own orders and decrees. The stage was set for a power struggle between the provisional government and the Petrograd Soviet, a struggle that would have profound implications for the future of the Russian Revolution. Section 6. A World Transformed. Echoes of the February Revolution. The February Revolution sent shockwaves throughout the world. In the Allied capitals, the overthrow of the Tsar was greeted with cautious optimism. Some hoped that a democratic Russia would prove to be a more effective ally in the war against Germany. However, the fall of the Tsarist regime also raised concerns about the stability of the Eastern Front. Germany, eager to exploit the situation, facilitated the return of Vladimir Lenin, an exiled Bolshevik leader, to Russia. Lenin's arrival in Petrograd would have a profound impact on the course of the Russian Revolution. Beyond the immediate impact on the war, the February Revolution had a profound ideological impact on the world. It inspired a wave of revolutionary fervor, particularly in countries that had also experienced the horrors of World War I. The February Revolution demonstrated that even the most entrenched autocratic regimes were not immune to the forces of change. It showed that ordinary people, driven by desperation and a desire for a better life, had the power to topple governments and reshape the world. Section 7. Conclusion. The February Revolution's enduring legacy. The February Revolution was a pivotal event in Russian history. It marked the end of the Tsarist regime and paved the way for the Bolshevik Revolution later that year. The revolution's legacy, however, extends far beyond the borders of Russia. The February Revolution was a testament to the power of popular movements and the yearning for social justice. It inspired people around the world to challenge oppressive regimes and fight for a more equitable society. The revolution also highlighted the dangers of unchecked state power, the importance of political reform, and the need to address the root causes of social and economic inequality. The lessons of the February Revolution remain relevant today, as people around the world continue to grapple with issues of democracy, human rights, and social justice. The February Revolution serves as a reminder that the course of history is not predetermined. It is shaped by the actions of individuals, both ordinary and extraordinary, who have the courage to stand up for what they believe in, even in the face of overwhelming odds.